Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our 6th and final DARPA Forward. We're so excited to have you with us today. And we are also very grateful to the University of California, San Diego for welcoming us to America's finest city. You know, this is by far the largest crowd we have had at any DARPA Forward event. And I know a big part of that is because of the amazing work that's done in California in terms of the science and technology space. I will say that as winter started to move upon us on the East Coast, people started thinking, you know, San Diego, December, and the numbers started climbing up. So we're all thrilled to be here and to have the sun shining on us together. So we've traveled all over the country, showing you what we've been up to, finding ways that we can all collaborate together. While this is our final in-person event, both in-person and hybrid, it's just the start of something bigger. So, and we'll be talking about that throughout the next day and a half. My role today is to introduce you to DARPA itself and to our mission, and also to DARPA Forward, the conference series. Now, before I tell you about DARPA, I thought you might like to hear a little bit more about yourselves as an audience. So there are actually about 900 of you in all, half in person and half online. Not counting the DARPA people, about 15% are from government, 35% from academia, and the rest from industry. And from industry, 112 of you actually represent small businesses, and 29 of you, not from industry, but from the broad group, 29 of you are DARPA risers. So if you're a DARPA riser, could you raise your hand? I see all the hands going up. Everyone take a look. If you have time during the breaks, and we try to provide ample break time, get to know some of these risers. They're all early career researchers nominated by either DARPA program managers or by University of California, San Diego leadership and sort of partner institutions as people who are working on really cool research related to national security, and which demonstrates the potential to lead to technological surprise, which is something that's very important to us. Okay, and one more distinction about the audience. Over half of you have never worked with DARPA before, and that's really exciting. So, means we're sort of delivering to two different audiences. Those of you that know DARPA really well, we are here to let you know that we are continuing to deliver on the DARPA mission, let you know what we're thinking about, what directions we're going, and to hear from you all the things that you think we should be thinking about. Folks who are new, I want to introduce you to this crazy and unconventional concept called DARPA. As the video said, it's not a place, it's a collection of people moving technology forward. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about DARPA, and I'll start off with the national security landscape. It's confusing and it's chaotic. You know, a few decades ago, if you were in the sort of the business of national security, things were simpler. Nowadays, you have to worry, in terms of adversaries, you have to worry about terrorist networks. You have to worry about criminal networks, as well as large nation states. And sometimes they're all working in ways that might be combined that are much harder to sort of figure out. So the boundaries are blurry. They're operating at multiple scales in both the physical and the virtual world. Okay, technology. That's also been changing a lot. It's dynamic, it's democratized, and it's moving faster than ever. And for all kinds of problems that we're trying to solve, that is incredibly awesome. But when you're thinking about how it can be used against you, it's also terrifying. Okay, in the world, and our nation, increasingly complex, interdependent, volatile. People are still exhausted, I think still grieving from the pandemic, angry and often afraid of change. So national security does not look like what we might have thought, where it was just aircraft, ships, or weapons a few decades ago. Now it means everything, from biodefense to cyber, material science, maybe atmospheric and climate modeling, you name it. And whatever you name it, there's a good chance that it's moving really quickly. Okay, so keeping our nation safe is hard. And the question of what we're going to do about it is one of the reasons we're all here today. You know, I don't think it will come as a surprise to anybody in this room that we at DARPA think that science and technology are an important part of the solution space. So science and technology used wisely and purposefully harnessed are key to national security as well as to societal and economic advances. It takes an ecosystem to make those advances. So let's talk about the ecosystem. I tend to think of it as two big groups, the funders and the doers. So the funders would be National Science Foundation, NIH, of course the Department of Defense, and other governmental departments, corporate research and development, maybe philanthropic research and development. And on the doers would be many of the people in this room. universities, nonprofits, industry, small business, federal labs as well, right? And collectively, this ecosystem is making steady progress forward. Within that ecosystem, we are the disruptors. DARPA was created during the Cold War in response to a huge technological surprise. It was the launch of the Sputnik satellite. The United States did not want to be surprised like that ever again, and so decided that one of the best ways to prevent technological surprise would be to create it. And with that, DARPA was born. For 64 years now, we have made and continue to make pivotal investments into breakthrough technologies for national security. We want to change the trajectories of technology development, completely move the direction, or accelerate, or find entirely new ways to solve problems. So when it seems like there are two impossible choices, we look for a third way. All right, so do we have material scientists in the room? Raise your hands if we do. Yeah, oh good, I see a few. We had one place where I swear we didn't have any material scientists. I thought, how could that be? Okay, so you all are really familiar with this when you think about your Ashby plots, right? You know, we want you to completely defy the laws of chemistry and physics. So for example, you know, something that is super strong and super light at the same time. That's an example of the third way. And speaking of material science, did you know that DARPA was seminal to the creation of material science and engineering as a discipline? A few other things that we're known for would include the Saturn V rocket, which took humans to the moon for the very first time. A little computer science experiment called the ARPANET. And by the way, if you look closely at that, it's a little hard to read. You will notice that the University of California system is very well represented in that very first ARPA network. So the ARPANET grew up, graduated, became the internet. Okay, we held a grand challenge, what seems like not that long ago to me, but it actually has been quite a number of years. It was our very first grand challenge with self-driving cars having to race each other across the desert because we figured, you know, how hard could that be, right? Yeah, but you know what? In classic DARPA fashion, we did it again the next year. Multiple vehicles crossed the finish line. A couple years after that, we put them into an urban setting, and the self-driving car industry was born. I could go on all day, and feel free when you have a break to browse our timeline of greatest hits. We obviously don't have time to do that, but I want to hit one more topic because it's really important to why those of us in the room can actually all be here sitting next to each other. About a decade ago, we made investments in mRNA vaccines. We did it because we were worried about our soldiers. But I do remember when the program manager first pitched that program, he said, you know, if we ever had a global pandemic, it could come in handy, right? There was a little startup company that he was first working with. I think it was only 4 or 5 people at the time, a little company called Moderna. So enough with the history. Like DARPA doesn't think too much about the past. Our job is to invent the future. So as the self-driving cars may have indicated, we are not afraid of risk. We actually embrace and celebrate it. In order to do that, it's not really in human nature, right, to embrace risk. In order to do that, we have a really unusual business model. We recruit program managers from across multiple sectors and disciplines all across the country. We give them access to what is close to a $4 billion budget, and we tell them to create and execute programs, technology programs that they think will change the world. And then just when they're getting comfortable, usually around the 4-year mark, we kick them out. And we have a constant rotation, so people are always bringing in new ideas and are always racing against the clock to make those really dramatic changes. So at any moment, racing against the clock, you have somewhere between 90 and 100 DARPA program managers out there. Collectively, they start about 50 new DARPA programs a year, 50, across all technology areas. The programs, for those of you that are new to DARPA, by the way, these programs first make it to you as calls for proposals that we call broad agency announcements, or BAAs, so a little DARPA speak there. If you think that, when you see them, if you think that you, usually as part of a team, because they're almost always multidisciplinary, if you think that you could meet those BAA goals, then you should submit a proposal. These are not wired. We are really looking for the best and craziest ideas that we can find. And by the way, a good BAA, your first reaction should be, that's absolutely impossible, and you should probably be tempted to walk away. But hopefully we will draw you back in with the possibility that you really could do something that's impossible. And also, if these BAAs are not like touching on the topics that you think are really important or the breakthroughs that you know are out there, if DARPA is missing these ideas, then you need to let us know. Okay, now while you're thinking about that, in the meantime, here's some of the things our program managers are thinking about and working on today. Way too many to name them all, so I'll just do sort of 3 overarching highlights. Okay, it's a technology conference, and I'm pretty sure there is a rule, maybe even a law there, that you can't talk about technology without talking about artificial intelligence. So we'll start with AI. DARPA tends to think about AI as coming in waves, where the first wave was focused on rules. So think software like TurboTax. Second wave, statistically based, the era of big data and machine learning, which we're very much still in the middle of. But DARPA is thinking about the third wave, which brings those first two waves together. It's where we've been pushing with a lot of our current programs, but we're having the conversations now to think about what the fourth wave actually looks like. So if you joined us for DARPA Forward in Atlanta back in October, you would have gotten a hint about that next step. We introduced a new initiative called AI Forward. It's focused on reimagining the future of AI for national security. And we're calling on the greatest minds in AI research: academia, industry, the DoD, intelligence community, government, allies, to really convene in a series of workshops and conversations this summer to think about what that future looks like. If you're interested and you want to get on the list of updates, just contact us at the email on the screen. All right, another really hot topic in the technology world today would be microelectronics. So continuous improvement in microelectronics over the previous decades has enabled countless aspects of modern life. Many thought that we were reaching the end of that technology improvement curve, but some people didn't agree. We were among them. And several years ago, DARPA launched the Electronics Resurgence Initiative, or ERI. We've been at it for a few years, and we are all in on some of the breakthroughs that have been demonstrated during ERI, which is still going. And we are actually now launching ERI 2.0, which looks at the technological challenges that we face in making those early breakthroughs actually work at scale and in the real world. Okay, so AI and microelectronics, a lot of technology push. But the reality is, the bulk of what DARPA does, we tend to think more about problem pull. So let me give you as my last example, the topic of resilient supply chains. We have lots of DARPA programs across, I think, every single one of our offices, thinking about some aspect of supply chains. We have programs looking at making food, water, and medicine at the point that you need it. So food and water extracted from air, in some cases with the help of microbes, or food made from recycled plastic. Medicine made from commodity materials that you can get anywhere in the world. We're also doing new kinds of very complex modeling so that we can try to understand that really fragile and interdependent supply chain so that we can focus on stress testing and making it more resilient and predicting where it might break before it's too late. And then when we can't make the things that we want to make right where they might need to be, we're also thinking about new methods of transport. Okay, yeah, as I said, it's just a very small sample of the things you're doing, and you don't have to remember any of these. What I do want you to remember is our business model. New people, new ideas, big risks. It's important that you understand that basic model, and it brings us to why we're here today. DARPA Forward is this year's conference series, but it's not new for DARPA to convene a big group of people. Historically, we have brought people together for big events, a few thousand people, maybe Washington, D.C., maybe Disneyland. And at these events, and I've been to at least 3 of them, they're fantastic, right? Great connections have been made, ideas have been sparked, successes and failures have been celebrated. But from the very beginning, there was something that always worried me. It wasn't like all the fantastic people that were in the room. It was all the fantastic people that weren't in the room that we were missing. And I wondered who wasn't actually part of the conversation. So when I left DARPA after my first tenure here, I went off to Colorado, become the vice president for research at the Colorado School of Mines, where I spent a lot of time working with people who focused on natural resources and energy. And I got to know universities all up and down the Front Range, across sort of that Rocky Mountain region of America, and everywhere I heard and saw amazing research happening. Cool breakthrough DARPA-like ideas from people who knew nothing about DARPA. And I thought, okay, now I know what we're missing. So instead of doing one big conference and asking you who don't know us to actually take the time to come find us in Washington, D.C., we thought we should actually bring DARPA to you. And so the idea of doing 6 smaller conferences across the country was what drove us to create DARPA Forward. So we're here to ask you and to invite you to take a leap with us. Help us think the thoughts that we haven't come up with yet. If any aspect of this intrigues you, by the way, you have a handy brochure, physical if you're in the room, and it's virtual if you're online, that tells you all of the different ways you can work with us. And we have designed the itinerary, the agenda, to really give you a taste of life at DARPA. We wanted to give you a feeling for what the daily conversations feel like, the arguments, because there are quite a few of those, the mind-altering challenges to our assumptions of what we think is possible. We've got portfolio briefs where we talk about existing DARPA technology portfolios and the directions that we think we're going in next. Some really good and I hope provocative panelists, amazing keynote speakers, and what I tend to think of as palate cleansers in the form of lightning talks and short tech demos. Also, for each DARPA Forward event, we have invited the host university to share the stage for an hour to tell us what they think is relevant to national security. So you'll see that as university host session on the agenda. Speaking of the agenda, as you look at it, if you are anything like me, I suspect that you have decided which sessions you're going to skip, so you can go hang out in the hallway, and which ones you're going to pay attention to. I'm going to encourage you not to do that, just this once. So I want you to be open to unexpected connections on problem areas that are completely outside your area of expertise. If we are successful, your brains will hurt, but hopefully in a really good way. Also, if you've attended any of the DARPA Forward events this year, you know that we have announced a big new DARPA initiative at the end of each conference. This is no different, so tomorrow at the end of the day, we'll share our final big announcement of the DARPA Forward series. It's an effort that will build on the key theme of both bringing together and expanding the innovation ecosystem to benefit national security. And if your brain hasn't already exploded by then, we'll be sure to give you something good to think about on your way home.